Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this virtual farm field trip. We are live today in Corvallis, Oregon at Oregon State University's Honeybee Lab. My name is Lacey and I'll be the moderator today. Before we start our tour today, I wanted to go over a few logisticals to make sure we have a great experience. We've muted everyone and everyone will remain muted throughout the tour so everyone can hear our tour guide clearly. If you have questions, you can send them to us using the chat feature. Please only type questions to us in the chat. This will help us see questions and ask as many as possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce our host and tour guide for today's virtual farm field trip. Addie, take it away, Addie.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Addie Rang. I'm a junior here at Oregon State University. I am majoring in international studies and then also agricultural sciences with a couple minors in ag ed and comparative international agriculture. I have been a beekeeper since I was in 8th grade, and I am a student worker at the Honeybee Lab here on campus. So we have our bee yard. You guys were looking at it earlier. This is the hive that we're going to be going into today. This is a top bar hive. And I've got my equipment here with me. This is called a hive tool. It's got a hook on one end to kind of pry the frames apart, and then a pointy end as well to scrape off any propolis, which is sticky stuff that you'll see in a bit. And then I've also got our smoker lit and ready to go. This will help keep the bees calm and keep them happy as we go through their home. I've also got my gear on, the full bee suit, so they will not be able to sting me, which is great. So we are going to get started here by opening up this hive. Oh, I got to set down. They've sealed it on with propolis here, so it's really tricky. But here's the inside. You can see this canvas here is the inner cover. So we're going to peel that out for our first act of business. Just peels away like that. We're going to give the bees some smoke. And what's really cool about a top bar hive is you can put as many frames as you want in it, whereas the other hives that you guys saw when you came into the Zoom room were more like boxes. So you stack them on top of each other to grow, whereas it's more horizontal and you add frames for a top bar hive. So we are going to get into the first frame here. So on the first frame, we should be seeing a lot of honey and pollen. The outside frames, that's where they keep all of their food and where they make it. Whereas we go deeper inside the hive, then we should start seeing more of the brood, which is the baby bees. Be super gentle lifting up all of our frames because you don't want to do what's called rolling. You don't want to roll the queen. So if you lift it up too fast, then the bees can get caught in between the frames. So what we're looking at here, you can see all of those white shiny things that are curled up. That's what we call brood. It's little larvae of the bees. And I'm not sure if you should be able to, if you're able to see it, but as you get closer to the outside, here, maybe if I set this down, closer to the outside in this area, you can really see it. The bigger larvae in the center, and then as you go out, you can see smaller and smaller larvae, and maybe even eggs. Those are really hard to see. But eggs stay eggs until they're 3 days old, and then they start moving into the larva and start getting fed royal jelly and all sorts of delicious food there. You can also tell that this frame of brood is worker brood. The she can either lay a worker egg, and all of the workers are going to be our females, and then the boys are called drones. So this is all worker brood because the cells, if you look at it from an angle, they're all flat. There's nothing sticking up or popping out, whereas drone brood will have more space because drones are bigger. We can see on this frame, let's see if we can find a drone. Most people think drones are the queen when they first look at them because they're so much bigger. Ah, here's one. So in the center of the frame here, see that guy with super big eyes? That is a drone. So their cells where they grow are a little bit bigger and pop out. But drones are super fun. They can't sting you. And they're just really cute and fuzzy, and they kind of almost look like bumblebees. They just hang about the hive. I'm gonna flip this over. See, the goal is to find the queen eventually. You can see we've got some what's called burr comb at the top of at the bottom of the frame. I'm just folding it at the top. The bees sometimes will just grow, will build comb on the outsides of the frames. And then what we want to do to maintain a clean hive as a beekeeper is you just want to scrape that off. Comes off really easy, especially since it's warm weather. But it's really nice. And the bees are being so happy today because it's warm, but not super hot. Whoops. So the queen is not on this frame. But another cool thing that you can see on this frame is you see how this bee has its head in, it's just sticking its little butt out. Right now, it is chewing up some honey. It's making honey on the outskirts of the frame. So a good indicator of a healthy hive and a healthy queen is going to be a football shape in the middle of the frame. This isn't a superstellar frame to go off of because most of the brood has been hatched as it's a little bit spotty. But you would want to see a football almost shape, an oval of this capped brood or open brood. And then in the corners, you can already see there's some honey reserves that are starting to be made here. They'll put honey and pollen on the outside of each frame. So then when it comes time for winter and they're all clustered together and huddled up, then they have easy access to food. The queen is not on that frame, so we are going to set this one aside here so the hive is a little bit easier to move around.
Addie, we have a few questions.
Oh, yes.
So why can honeybees only sting once?
Honeybees can only sting once because they have a little barb at the end of their stinger. So when they sting your skin and they try to pull out, the barb gets caught, almost like a fishing hook. And then when they do sting you and they're trying to fly away, when they do fly away, then all of their guts and insides get ripped out of their body. And then they minutes after they sting you. So that's why when you get stung, they know that they will die if they sting you. So they're really gentle and they don't want to.
And then another question is, why does the smoke calm down the bees?
The smoke calms down the bees because it blocks their communication. They communicate with pheromones usually throughout the hive. So as I'm working through like the left side, the bees that I'm working with, they may get a little bit more agitated. And if they get a little bit antsy, then they'll run to the other frames and be like, oh my gosh, there's this girl who's coming in our hive. Like, watch out, and get everybody else really riled up. So it blocks the communication between between the bees a little bit so that they're able to chill a little bit more. There any other questions?
Yeah, just a few more.
Oh
So
yeah.
how can the bees live with the layer on top of them?
Like the inner cover.
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, it's just a protection so that they don't build like on the wood up here. They would be able to live without it. It doesn't harm them in any way. It's just an extra kind of little bit easier to be a beekeeper. If you don't open up the hive and if there's comb out here, then you're pulling frames. They'll attach all of the frames to the top. So then you would try to open it and the frames would be like this and they would fall down and the bees would get really angry and you could smush some bees or kill the queen doing that. So it doesn't harm them in any way and it's pretty helpful to make it a little bit easier for beekeeping.
Are the bees able to leave the hive, or how do they get back in if they do leave?
Yeah, they are able to leave the hive at any time. The hive entrance is over here. You can see they've got a little hole. And what's really interesting is as bees go through their life cycle, they get different jobs. So the first 3 or so days, once a bee hatches out of its cell, its first task is to be a nurse bee. And so it will help all of the other little larvae and it will feed them and it will give them water and make sure that they're taken care of. And then when they are teenagers, essentially, they will go to what's called the Queen's Court, which they will basically march around and follow the Queen, whatever she's doing. They'll help her move, they'll help her eat, they'll clear away her poop. They do everything for her. That's kind of like the prime time of their lives, you know, hanging out with the Queen and doing stuff with her. And then what they will be doing is what we saw in the corners of the frames with making the honey. And then their last job when they're old is to go out and leave the hive and forage for pollen and nectar from the flowers. So all of the bees that you see outside on flowers and such are actually the oldest bees. Ooh, okay. So here we've got some drone comb and we've got a really good brood pattern. So you see how the brood pattern is less spotty, there's more of it and it's more packed. And then you can see the burr comb on the bottom that I talked about earlier, but it's not empty. Do you see how it's kind of like popcorn? Like it's like little mountains compared to the worker brood. That is because it is drones there. And actually the queen doesn't decide if she's going to lay a drone or a worker. It is all dictated off of the space of the cell. So you can see the burr comb, the little hexagons are a little bit bigger and wider. So she will lay a drone cell, a drone egg there, because that's the only thing that can be stored. Glad that we're able to find that. And you can see there's some guys in here with their butts facing us, and they're the ones that are feeding the larvae in there as well. Let's see.
Addie, we have a few more questions.
Yeah.
So how many beehives do you have at OSU?
At OSU, the number of beehives that we have is always changing. We right now have more, that is a good question. We definitely have more than 40. We may have even more than 50. This is one of our main apiaries. There's hives all over, and there's some behind those trees. And this is just one of our many beehives apiaries that we have. This is Oak Creek. So we also have one at like Lewis Brown Farm, and they have about 20 hives there. And then we also have some hives at what we call Vegetable Farm. So we've got a whole lot of them. And then the number will increase because if bees decide that the space that they're in when they are done overwintering, if they decide, oh, this space is too small, we don't want to live here next year, there's not going to be enough room for us to grow, then what they will do is they will actually decide, they will vote through their pheromones and through dancing. They will vote and decide to leave the hive, and it's what is called swarming. And swarming, ooh, this is cool. So you see, there's some of the drone brood right there that was cracked open when I lifted up the frame. And you can see the little outline. They're pretty, wonder if I can take one out. They're still pretty young, about 17-ish days old, because their eyes haven't turned color. They're all still white. When they're right about to hatch, then their eyes will turn purple. And you'll see that there. And what we've got here in the middle of this frame is what's called a queen cage. I will take that out. Let me check the other side real quick for the queen, so make sure we don't squish her. But a queen cage is what you'll put in your beehive to replace the queen. So if the bees don't have a queen, or you are just getting bees, it will likely come, the queen will come in a cage such as this. Let's see, I need another hand. So this is what a queen cage looks like. The queen will be in here by herself usually. And what happens is when you buy what's called a package of bees, the beekeeper who sells you the bees has a bunch of queens in cages like this. And he will go through, or she will go through, and take all of these bees and will shake the frame violently into just really get in there. They're kind of like water, you've seen those videos where like they're like, cats are water. Bees are also like water. They will fit into any container that you put them in, and it's really fun to see them being shaken. They kind of are like little confetti. But he'll separate about like 1,000 bees into a box, and then he'll take a queen cage and put that in each box and then ship them off to you. So the bees don't know this queen. They were taken from this other hive. So why she's in the queen cage is because they need to get used to her pheromone, or else they'll kill her, which is really bad. So the beekeeper, to keep her safe, will put her in a queen cage. And then at the top, you can see this is eaten through, but what used to be in here was like a hard candy, just like some sugar mixed with water. So the queen can't actually eat anything other than this royal jelly that her bees, that the royal court will make her. So she can't eat and escape this cage. So what has to happen is the bees eventually, after a week or so, will get used to her pheromone and her smell. And then they will decide that they accept her. And if they accept her and they like her, then they'll chew through and eat the candy and let her escape and start laying eggs. And then she'll be the queen of the hive. So this is a leftover from a couple weeks ago when we put a new queen in here for this hive, because they had lost their queen, so we had to get a new one. But that's a fun, I wasn't expecting this to be in here. Fun little extra tangent.
So Addie, if like the queen bee leaves or dies, what happens to the hive?
Yes, so if the queen bee leaves or dies, what could happen is the beekeeper will either buy a queen like that, or because any egg, let's see, the sunlight isn't super great, but there's some eggs in this little general area. Because an egg is an egg until 3 days, and then it becomes a larva. So any egg that is in a worker cell, not a drone cell, could become a queen. It is all up to the decision of the hive. So actually, if the hive doesn't like their queen and they want a new one, what they will do is they will take as many eggs as possible and they will start essentially growing a queen. So the only difference between all of these worker cells and a potential queen cell is that the queen stays in the cell longer and is fed more royal jelly. So they'll make as many queens as possible, and then the first one to hatch out of their cell will start chirping and walk around the entire hive and spread her unique pheromone. And what she's doing with the little chirping is a battle cry, and she is trying to find any other queen that is in the hive. So if two queens hatch at the same time, they'll start searching for each other, and they'll also start looking for any queen cells that have not hatched. And it is the only time that they will use their stinger. If two queens that are both hatched run into each other, then they will fight to the death. And the one who wins becomes queen of the hive. But yeah, the queen that is successful will go around and will find all of the queen cells, and they look a little bit funky. They're like peanuts almost, hanging off of the frame. And then she'll also like sting inside the cell to kill any other potential queens in there. So it's really, really crazy what bees are capable of. I know when I was first starting beekeeping, I thought the queen was in charge of everything and the other worker bees and had to follow what she said. But if the bees don't like her, then she's not in a good spot.
So Addie, what do adult bees eat?
Adult bees will eat pollen and nectar. All of the stuff essentially that we've seen on the outside of the frames, they do not eat royal jelly. Royal jelly is just for the larvae and for the queen. But yeah, they'll eat pollen. I don't think we've gotten a good view of that yet. Pollen and honey.
And then how do they drink water?
They are really, really funny. They don't like clean water to drink. So one of the things that you can actually do to help out any bees or any native pollinators that are in your area, besides planting native plants, is you can get a little bowl or like a little like planter or something from Home Depot and fill that up with some like hose water and throw in a couple like nails, rusty nails or rocks, maybe a little bit of mud. They will not drink clean water. They only like dirty water, but they drink it with their little tongues. And you want to put lots of rocks in that water source so that they have somewhere to land so that they don't drown in the water. So they'll land on the little rock and they'll just drink it up and then bring it back to the hive as well to make more royal jelly.
Do bees have fur?
Bees do not, they don't have necessarily fur. Let me see if I can convince one of these guys to crawl on me so you guys can see. They have a little bit of, maybe if you just get close to this guy, you can see it on near his eyes, on his face, and like the first part of his body there, you can see there's there's a little bit of fuzz going on there. So they've got a little bit of fur, I guess. And as they get older, you can tell how old a bee is by looking at it because that fuzz will be gone and worn down a little bit and look more gray. But the back half of them doesn't have no fur. That is a good question.
Can bees sting each other?
Yes, yes. So that is one thing that is a problem for beekeepers. When you have bees this close together, sometimes, there's going to be, say, this hive that we're in right now is doing really well, and their foragers got a lot of pollen and got a lot of honey made, but then say the hive next to it didn't get as much. If the bees don't have enough, oh, this is a really good shot of eggs in the bottom burr comb, the drone, yeah. If the bees don't have enough to eat, then they'll get pretty angry and they'll start looking for other food sources. So sometimes it's what we call robbing. Bees will rob each other's colonies and they'll try to sneak in and steal honey and other resources from their neighbors. And in that case, they will sting each other to protect their home. And then there's also some guard bees that are always at the front of the hive that are protecting that and monitoring who's coming in and protecting the hive as well. Queen is not on this frame either.
Is there a king bee? And if not, why is it just a queen?
There is not a king bee. It is just a queen because of their genetics. So remember how I said that bees can decide, the queen can decide based on the size of the cell if it's going to be a worker or a drone. This is because of how honeybee genetics work. So a queen bee will mate with a bunch of different drones. So all of these workers are her daughters in the hive. But all of the drones in the hive are just her genetics. It is an unfertilized egg that she lays to create a drone. So basically, drones don't have dads, they just have grandpas. So that's why there's no king bee in the hive. Oh, yes, nice eye, Jessica. There she is. She's got a yellow dot. The yellow dot is representative of the year. Each year, there'll be a different color. So you can keep track of how old the queen is. And then you also want to mark the queen because she, you want to make sure that that is the queen that you bought. Because if the bees get upset or angry and replace her, or if something bad happens and she ends up passing away, then you want to know as a beekeeper that it's not the original queen that you bought. And the queen is also the manager, essentially, of the happiness of the hive. So if the queen is angry and tends to get angry more often, ooh, we may see her lay an egg right here. She'll back her. Oh, maybe you can see the queen's court. They're all facing her right now. She's searching for empty cells to lay in. That'd be really cool. I've only seen a queen lay eggs a couple times in my many years of beekeeping, but she'll just essentially put her thorax in an empty cell and just back it up and.
So Addie, this is our last question. What do you like most about your job and working with bees?
I really love the honey. I have my own bees. I'm from Washington originally, so I have my own bees back home that my parents are taking care of right now. But I get honey from my own bees. Oop, I'm just going inside that cell. She's really checking it out. Oh, there she goes. She just laid a drone cell. She's sticking, oh, she may do another one. But yeah, I love the fresh honey.
As it's frozen, but thank
Oh
you
no.
for taking time to talk with our students about the honeybees. And thank you to all the students and classrooms for joining us today. Have a great day, everyone.